Okay, we'll start with Ms. Pollard. This is a question from Doug Rosen. As a member of the state senate, would you be willing to add a statement to any proposed legislation which reads, quote, how it would affect future generations, end quote?
And that's a very interesting idea. One of the boards I serve on is a group called Caucus, which fights for social and economic justice on the Central Coast. And we have a concept of 7 generations there. And we take the long view on things and how it's going to affect not only our children, but our grandchildren and the next 7 generations. So I originally got into this political arena because of my children. I still care a great deal about the next generations, and I think that's a fabulous idea. I like that.
All right, thank you.
Can we just answer with a yes or a no? I mean, yes.
Sure.
Yes, I think it's a beautiful idea, and I think it's something we should all be thinking about and putting into our regulations and legislation.
I'll just go brief and say yes.
Doug, you hit a home run, I think.
Yes, we often do start bills off with a list of whereas clauses that do exactly that kind of thing. And specifically, we need to look forward to the effect on future generations.
All right, Ms. Resnick. This question is from Stephen Franz. Please give your opinion on the mandatory labeling of all foods and feed. Foods and feeds?
Feeds are animal.
Yeah, okay, foods and feeds containing genetically engineered ingredients. And do you favor banning the herbicide glyphosate?
Yes, I'm in favor of full disclosure and full disclosure of all of the, you said ingredients in feeds and food, right? And I am in favor of that. I think people need to know what they are consuming and what they are introducing into the environment through feeds. The second part of the question?
Do you favor the banning of glyphosate?
Yes, I do.
Herbicide?
Yes, I do.
I want to thank Dr. Fran for his fearless work on this. And, you've been doing it when everyone else told you no, and everyone else said go away, and the persistence over time is what it takes to make progress in this state. So thank you. I'm going to stand with you and everyone else trying to push. I walked my mom's horse out through Thousand Oaks the other day. You look down, the horse is feeding on the ground. You look at the sign, it says glyphosate, warning, don't let any animals eat around here. No one should make contact, there's a risk. That's crazy along a horse trail to have that exposure to our animals, to our bodies, to our people. So I stand with Dr. France on this one, and on the labeling front, there's all kinds of toxins we don't label in our buildings, in our food, in our schools. So this is a much bigger issue, and the transparency to earn public trust out there is everything. So absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely yes on labeling. People should be able to make that decision for themselves, and the reason that the companies fight so hard against it is that they know what decision so many of us would make. And absolutely yes on banning Roundup, and I've also worked hard on banning atrazine, which is sterilizing frogs in the Central Valley and causing reproductive problems in humans, and we need to be getting that one, rid of that one as well as the pesticides they're putting on the strawberries in Moore Park.
Thank you.
And that's mostly in Oxnard. That's a whole other issue. But Dr. France, thank you for your work on this. It's an important issue to me. It's something that we're fighting over in Oxnard with the cause group, because we had pregnant women being exposed to these pesticides and herbicides that are being used in the strawberry fields, and they're being sprayed right next to elementary schools. So it's a huge battle, to answer the specific question, yes, I do support labeling foods and feeds that have GMO contents to them. If there's nothing wrong with it, then the manufacturer shouldn't be afraid of the labeling. But what disturbs me most about the GMOs is the reason Monsanto's doing it, particularly the soybeans, to make the soybeans resistant to Roundup, so that they can spray Roundup freely on these crops and they'll kill everything else except the part that we're going to eat. So that's what really disturbs me about GMOs, and yes, I think we need to do a lot more of it.
Okay, next question, we start with Mr. Stern.
Glyphosate?
And yes, I would ban glyphosate as well.
For Mr. Stern, I don't know if this is indicative of whoever submitted the question, but they did not include their name, so there may be something personal here. What is your position on the death penalty?
Well, the death penalty has been tremendously ineffective in our state at deterring violent crime because it's often caught up in court for decades. Now, there are some egregious crimes out there where that penalty is almost undeniably appropriate. But frankly, at this point, we can't keep going forward until we reform that system. So it's very hard to sit here and say you have a double rape, double homicide, where that shouldn't be on the table. But at this point in the justice system, it's not a functional tool of deterrence. So we should be reforming the death penalty if we're actually, as a people, going to decide that that's a punishment we want to have on the table.
Ms. Matthews?
I have long opposed the death penalty and became very active in this with the more recent data that's now shown how much it is costing us to continue with the death penalty. And so I sponsored several years ago the Los Angeles County Democratic Party's resolution that called for ending the death penalty and replacing it with life imprisonment without possibility of parole. And that went on, that has now become the state party's position, and we're very close to getting this eliminated in California. We need to keep fighting. We will get this done. I will keep fighting for this.
Thank you. Mr. Pollack?
And I also oppose the death penalty. I believe that there are fates worse than death, and it really bothers me that when we sentence these people to death, they have a new cause to live for, and they almost gain celebrity status, and it's absolutely ridiculous. That as far as I'm concerned, they should just be put away for life with no possibility of parole and be forgotten about. I think that would be the worst punishment we could mete out, and so I definitely am in favor of repealing the death penalty.
Ms. Resnick?
For economic and moral reasons, I'm completely opposed to the death penalty and always have been, and I support the position of the Democratic Party.
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Matthews on this question. From Dorothy Wright. In either of your professional capacities, have you ever represented developers?
I have not represented developers. I have not taken money from developers. I will not take money from developers.
I'm actually quite the opposite. I'm on the Economic and Community Development Committee for the City of Moore Park, and I sit across the table from developers that are wanting land use decisions. So I've always been on the other side, and I've been in the process. Even when I was on the school board, I would have to negotiate with developers to make sure that schools were fully taken care of.
I do not paint all developers with one brush. There are good and responsible developers, and there are irresponsible developers. So I cannot say that every single development is bad, because all of your homes, or many of them, have been built by developers, as have many of the buildings that you use every day. So I think there is responsible development. I personally, in my law practice, I did not personally represent developers. They were represented by others in my law practice. But I would represent a responsible developer, because I don't think that they're all evil. I think there may be some developers in this room. So the fact is, it's all about responsible development. It's about complying and being sensitive to the laws and respecting CEQA.
No, I haven't represented any developers. So that's the simple answer to that question, and all my record stands for standing up to overdevelopment and irresponsible development and not making any money off of that work. Right? That's not how I've made my living in my life, my profession. So no and no.
In an effort to finish up on time, I'd like to go to closing statements, but I will offer to anyone in the audience, if you feel you have a pressing question, which absolutely must be asked, so speak now or forever hold your peace.
I got a question.
Ted.
The issue in Malibu is rehab centers. We have a proliferation of rehab centers. Lou Lamont has been instrumental in getting a bill just introduced which would essentially control rehab centers. And I'd like to ask each of you if you will push hard for this bill, which is particularly important to Malibu.
We'll start with Mr. Stern. You got the mic.
I would say not just particularly important in Malibu, I would say it's an issue all across the state. We see it out in Tarzana, we see it out in Chino, we see it in low income, medium income, high income. I think there's an easy tendency to say this is a rich person's problem, but I don't believe that's the case. I think the law itself is being abused all over the place, and the original intent of the law, when you have a home there that's intended for use by, say, 3 or 4 people, and it's being used by, say, 25 people because they made a bunch of sub-residences within that, and then you park 40 cars around there, and then TMZ piles on top. That's not a good solution to dealing with drug treatment issues. So I'm thrilled that Councilmember Lamont has persisted year after year on this issue, again, in the face of huge resistance, to keep standing up. So thank you for continuing to push, and I'll be with you.
Matthews?
We need to deal with the drug treatment problems and mental health problems, and this connects into the homeless problems. We've had a tendency to push these from one community to another. You push the homeless over to here, you push the mentally ill over to another area, and that doesn't end up solving anything. They end up just being pushed by that community back. And so we do need to have statewide solutions that make sure that we are treating people fairly and not overburdening communities with these centers.
Thank you, Mr. Pollak.
In my work with Simi Valley Hospital, we had to deal with a crisis of rise in heroin use, especially among teenagers, and we established a detox and rehab program in the hospital itself. But it's a much larger issue and includes mental health, and that's something that I promise to make a priority as a senator, is to focus on prioritizing more resources for helping people with drug and rehabilitation problems, and particularly mental health.
Ms. Resnick?
Like other issues, this is actually a personal issue for me. One of my 3 children had a drug addiction problem, and I've suffered for many years trying to figure out what to do about that, and seeing the total lack of resources to be able to deal not only with my son, but all of the various people that I've encountered during this process. I'm actually on the board of directors of Beit Teshuvah, a drug rehabilitation center, which is a nonprofit facility. And I do feel that it's a unique facility, and it should not be. So I do agree wholeheartedly with Richard Matthews, who talks about the need for statewide mental health and drug addiction facilities, all as part of our overall health care system that has failed so dramatically on this particular issue. Because parents like me, who love their children and want them to survive, need a place, a healthy place to be able to help their kids get better. And so I don't know the particulars of exactly what is at stake in your particular statute, but I do know that this is a very, very serious problem, and it's tied in with our problem of homelessness and mental health.
Thank you. Next question.